بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Okay, so inshallah in this session what we want to do as quickly as we can is to go through some of the discussions that are left that we're not going to get into the details of. Just want to show you that there's a lot more going on when we talk about the sunnah. Now, the sunnah, although this I brought it here, but it applies to the Quran and sunnah. And it's basically mostly, I would say, or a good amount of it is going to be hermeneutics and understanding texts and how people are communicating. Yes, and what can be said that the person said even though they didn't say it. Okay, I'll give you an example. What I mean by that. For example, if Allah says that salat is or Hajj is wajib, and we'll get to this example later as well. If Allah says Hajj is wajib, does he have to also tell me it's wajib to walk or transport or commute or whatever the word is to Mecca, to travel to Mecca? Does he have to tell me it's wajib? Or when Allah says Hajj is wajib, all of those things that are supposed to allow me to do Hajj also become wajib on their own. We'll talk about these things. So if Allah says Hajj is wajib, then He's also said walking to Hajj or traveling to Hajj, flying, whatever it takes to get there is also wajib, even though He didn't say it. Yeah? These are things that we call the lawazim of kalam, those implications of what people say sometimes. We want to see how much we can get out of a word or a sentence or a command and so on, okay? So there's a lot of these discussions that we will have. Now, I've broken it down into a few different categories here based on our usul books. But as I said, each of these has its own discussion that we don't want to get into. These are very technical discussions that we have. But I just want us to understand when later on we talk about taqleed and why it's easier to just let someone else do all this work. The reason is this. All of these have their own discussions. So when we look in the Quran, when we look in the Sunnah, what we find is that there's commands, do's and don'ts that are given to us, yeah? These do's and don'ts, the right term for it is there are awamir and nawahi. Awamir, the plural of amr, nawahi, the plural of nahi. What is amr? Amr is a command, a prescription. The first discussion that comes up is if there's a command that says, an imperative command that says, do this. Aqimu salah, atu zakah. Question. Does this mean that it's wajib? Does it imply wujub? What is the default here? What is the rule? The Quran says, aqimu salah. What do we translate it as? Oh, you who believe, like it's wajib to establish prayer. Is it wajib to establish prayer? Who said it's wajib? The Quran said aqimu. It gave me a command. Who says it's a wajib command? It might be a mustahab command. This is the whole discussion that we have here is who says an amr the default in it, the rule in it is wujub, being wajib. Who says that? How do you know? How do we know? Is there such a rule? Is there not? There's all these discussions about this, okay? And there are different reasons that are presented to prove that if there's an amr, that there's no other clues around it for us to figure out if it's wajib or mustahab. The default is wajib, not mustahab. This is a discussion, yeah? A person will say, oh, I don't believe in ijtihad, I don't believe in taqleed. Well, you have to have a reason and dalil for everything. Do you have it? Prove it to me. Prove that amr implies wujub, that something is wajib. We have all these awamir that are not wajib awamir, they're mustahab awamir. And other types of awamir too that aren't even mustahab, I don't want to get into. Who said it's wajib? Okay, so that's a discussion. Obviously, the default will be wujub, but what's the reason for it? That's discussed. Then when we talk about things being wajib through these awamir, there's a million types of wajib that we have. Right? We have wajib, which one is it? Mutlaq, mashrut, mu'allaq, munajjaz, and so on. I'll go through some of these and we'll I'll give you some examples so you see what's going on here. And then all the details that come with each of these types of wajibat. Is if it's mutlaq or mashrut, well, sometimes you will have a wajib act, which is, for example, hajj. The wujub of this act, the wujub of hajj, compared to different things out there, is it conditional upon those things or it's irrelevant and it's wajib even without those things? Example, hajj is going to be wajib, it's going to be a mutlaq wajib when it comes to traveling. To be able to perform hajj, I have to travel to Mecca, correct? But the wujub of hajj being wajib on me, is not conditional upon the travel itself. Yeah, if hajj becomes wajib on me, for me to be able to fulfill it, I'll have to travel. But it becoming wajib on me is not conditional upon me actually traveling. It's wajib on me even if I don't travel. If I choose to stay home, it's still wajib on me. Okay? But at the same time, this same hajj that's mutlaq compared to when it's compared to walking or traveling to Mecca, it's going to be mashrut and conditional upon what? Istita'a, financial ability and capability. In other words, it doesn't even become wajib on a person who can't, who's not going to have istita'a. Okay? It might become wajib on a person who can't travel, but then they're off the hook. But the wujub is still there. So there's a little slight difference here between these two. That's one discussion. Another discussion, mu'allaq and munajjaz. When something becomes wajib, sometimes it becomes wajib at one time. The wujub is one time, but the wajib itself happens at another time, like hajj again. With hajj, yes, the moment it becomes wajib is different than the time it's actually carried out. Correct? But what's an example for a wajib whose wujub is simultaneous with its wajib, with this wajib? For example, salat. The moment it becomes fajr time, salat becomes wajib at that moment. So the time you're supposed to pray or you can pray is the same time it becomes wajib on you. So its wujub is the same as the wajib act itself. These two are at the same time. Unlike hajj. Hajj becomes wajib on you maybe 2 months before, 3 months before. Yeah, but the time for hajj is when? In Dhul Hajjah, right? So this is a mu'allaq. Mu'allaq means it's hanging, it's not on its own. Once again, it's conditional, but there's another term here that's used, mu'allaq, not mashrut. These two shouldn't be confused. Munajjaz, on the other hand, means right now. It's happening right away. Right when it becomes wajib, yeah, that's the time to also carry it out, okay? Although we have a window for it, but right when it becomes wajib is when we can also carry it out, unlike hajj. Hajj becomes wajib on me, but I have to wait till Dhul Hijjah to do it, okay? Another one, wajib asli versus wajib taba'i, okay? If a command, we have an amr in the Quran, in the hadith that says this is wajib on you, sometimes it can be a wajib asli, sometimes it has to be wajib taba'i. Which one is it? Is there a rule here? Is there a default here? What's the difference between these two? Asli and taba'i. Sometimes something becomes wajib in and of itself because of what it is. For example, again, hajj. Hajj is wajib in and of itself. Okay? It has an asli wujub. But then you have the traveling for hajj. That's also wajib. But it's not a wajib in and of itself. It's a wajib taba'i. That means the wujub that it has is not originally for itself. It's because something else is wajib. But the only way to do the other wajib thing is to do this first. This also becomes wajib as a result. Traveling to hajj. Yeah? And there are discussions that come up here in regards to certain matters. If hajj is a wajib act, okay, is it, for example, wajib for me to also make money so hajj becomes wajib on me or not? Not necessarily. Yeah, there's discussions that will happen in regards to these different types of things. But if it becomes wajib on me, do I have to travel? Can I just stay home and say until Dhul Hijjah comes and then I don't have enough time to travel to hajj anymore? And I say, oh, I can't travel anymore, so it's not wajib on me anymore. How does it work with these? So we have a wajib asli, we have wajib taba'i. We have wajib takhyiri, wajib ta'yini. Sometimes a hadith or a verse of Quran is going to make something wajib on me. Yeah? But the wujub of it is a wujub aini versus a wujub Excuse me, wujub takhyiri versus a wujub ta'yini. If I said something else, I'm sorry. Takhyiri and ta'yini. Sometimes something is wajib on us, but something else can take its place as another wajib. All right. So, for example, let's say Salatul Jum'ah during the time of ghaibah. Okay. During the time of ghaibah, sometimes people ask this question: what's the niyyat I'm supposed to have for Salatul Jum'ah? Is it's wajib? Yeah, it's a wajib, but it's a wajib takhyiri. I mean, and I'm not saying this so that now you think, oh, I never thought of takhyiri in my intention, so I got to make up a lot of salats. No. You know it's wajib on you, but I'm just letting you know it's a wajib takhyiri. Means you have takhyir, you have ikhtiyar, you have a choice to do this one or to do something else instead of it, which is salatul dhuhr. Okay? So on the day of Friday, on the day of Jum'ah, salatul Jum'ah is a wajib still. It's not mustahab. Although it's mustahab to do salatul Jum'ah, but when you're actually praying it, if it's going to take the place of your dhuhr, it's a wajib namaz, but it's a wajib takhyiri versus wajib ta'yini, which is obvious. Everyone knows what that is. It's usually the wajibat that we have that cannot be replaced by anything else. Like the month of Ramadan, fasting. Fasting in the month of Ramadan is a wajib takhyiri, I wish, but it's not. It's ta'yini. That means it's only this one. There's nothing else, there's nothing around it. What's another example for wajib takhyiri? Can anyone tell me? Those who break their fast, what? If someone breaks their fast on purpose without any justification, what is it? There are different things they can do as kafara, right? So this is wajib takhyiri. You can either free a abd, or you do 60 fasts or 60 poor people. You feed 60 poor people. Some people say, oh, I'll just give them money. But it's not, you can't just give them money necessarily. You have to actually feed 60 people. Yeah, so it's hard to find 60 poor people. Okay? So anyway. But yeah, there are people who do that for us back home. We send them the money there, I guess. Wajib aini, wajib kifai. This one you've heard of probably as well. Sometimes the wajib, the amr is making something wajib on me, but the mujtahid has to figure out, is it aini or is it kifai? Aini means it's on every person on their own separately. Kifai means it's on everybody, but as a whole. Meaning what? Meaning if one person does it, the rest don't have a taklif and responsibility anymore. But if nobody does it, everyone's responsible. Yeah. An example of this will be, of course, janaza. But other than that, for example, all of the different needs that a society has in a Muslim, let's say, country, for example, yeah, the needs that the society have, these are all, addressing these needs are wajib kifai. So for example, being a butcher is one of those makruh occupations. Okay? Being a butcher in and of itself is makruh. To slaughter animals, makruh. But if society needs it, it becomes a wajib kifai. Forget about makruh, it's wajib now. For there to be enough people to take care of this act. Yeah? To take care of this need of society. All the way till even religious studies. Yeah? Not everyone can go, the Quran talks about this, not everyone can go and study Islam and Deen, but it is a need. So some people have to go from amongst the community so that they can come back and teach the people. Whether it's this, whether it's doctors, whether all of these things, if a person has the right intention of, hey, oh Allah, I'm going to do this for you because it's a wajib kifai, and there aren't enough people for it, then yes, it can have a lot of thawab and reward as well. So that's wajib aini versus wajib kifai. Salat's not like that, unfortunately. Oh Allah, there are enough people praying, so it's off my shoulders. There is no such thing. Yeah, it's aini. It's on every single person individually. Muwassa' mudayyaq. Yes, muwassa' comes from wasi', from wusa', which means there's flexibility, there's room for something. Versus mudayyaq, yeah, or it comes from diq or zayq, which means tightness and something barely fitting. And so some acts of worship, the time allotted to them encompasses the act itself completely. Versus other acts and other wajibs that are allotted a time frame and a window of time in which that time frame is more than the time it takes to do that act indeed. I'll repeat that one more time. Some acts will fill the time they've been allotted. Other acts won't fill it. They'll fill a portion of the time that's been allotted to them. Example, salat. Salat has been allotted, I don't know how much time right now. Dhuhr is like 12:40, Maghrib is like 6:20 or something, 6:15. Okay, so that's how many hours? That's like 6 hours. I don't know about anybody whose Dhuhrain takes 6 hours. Okay, so this is a wajib muwassa. That means the wajib itself, it has flexibility and room to put it wherever you want. Now, in that time window, that window of time. Versus mudayyaq, that is that which you can't even lose a minute of the time that's allotted to it. Can anyone think of an example for that? Very good. I didn't think you would get it. Like Rosa and fasting. The fast starts from the time it's allotted all the way till the end of the time that has been allotted to it. Correct? So an example of wajib muwassa is sawm and fasting. Okay, there's something that has to be figured out as well. Another thing that needs to be figured out is, okay, the verse of the Quran says aqimus salah. And we know that we have to do it in this time period. What if I don't pray in that time period? This command of aqimus salah that came down to me, that said pray, and I didn't pray in the time period that I was supposed to pray, is this command that told me to pray within the time frame enough to prove for and establish for me that it is wajib for me to do qada after the time period is over? Or no, do I need a new command that tells me if you missed it, you have to make it up? So what do you think? With a raise of hands, that first command, is it enough to prove qada is also wajib on me if I miss it or not? What do you think? Let me see a raise of hands. Do we need a new command for that or not? Command? Raise your hand if we need a new command for that. Okay. All right. You're not sure? What do you think? Do we need a new command for qada to be wajib on me? If the first command said pray within this time period, but I missed it, I didn't do it. Well, guess what? The popular understanding, if not maybe unanimous, I'm not sure, but is that no, the command was you pray in this time period. Once you missed it, it's over. You did not fulfill that first command. That's why if I have to make it up later, there has to be another command for that, for qada. It's interesting. These are discussions that are out there. Yeah. For salat, we know there's other commands. It's wajib to make up the qada. Not just wajib namaz, but even mustahab salat is very encouraged. We have extra commands for the qada of them. Otherwise, that initial original command it established salat in that time period for me. Is it enough to establish it outside as well if I miss it? They say no, it's not enough. These are discussions. Marra or takrar. We all know what takrar means, right? To repeat something, right? Marra means one time. Takrar means to do it several times. If it says aqimus salah, does aqimus salah, for example, mean pray once, or I should just keep doing it? Which one is it? Well, you know from outside, you know that we have to pray more than once in our lifetime. But now I'll ask you this. It says pray. There's another verse that says perform hajj. How many times are we supposed to perform hajj in our lifetime? See, you thought you were a mujtahid. You see, which one is it? Or do we need extra commands for every prayer that is wajib on us? Can all of these be brought together into one special command that tells us to do it more than once? Which one is it? Well, here the discussion is that one time is going to be enough. And so if anything more than that is going to be wajib, that has to be communicated. Otherwise, one command is not enough for a lifetime of, or doing something more than once. So for example, if the mawla, they call it, the master says, bring me some meat, and you bring them meat once, have you fulfilled the command or not? Yes. If you fulfilled it, do you have to do it again? If he wants it again, he has to tell you again. So they'll say amr usually is going to be marra, not takrar. Okay? So these are some of these discussions that we have when it comes to the commands, the prescriptions. Okay? But then we move on to al-nahi. Just like we have do's in the Sharia, we also have don'ts in the Sharia. These are referred to as nawahi, plural of nahi, proscription. So we have prescription and proscription. Forbidding something is to proscribe it, okay? Okay, these nawahi, they talk about them as well. Okay, some of the discussions, once again, does it imply hurma? Don't do this. Does that mean it's haram? Just like amr, we had a discussion, does it mean wajib? Nahi, does it mean, or does it first and foremost mean haram, or does it mean makruh? Which one is it? Once again, the same discussion comes here, and they'll say that the rule, the default, unless otherwise specified, is that something is haram if the nahi comes for it. Okay? But then that has to be proven as well. Marra or takrar? What did we say for amr? In amr, we said, is it marra or is it takrar? Which one did we say? Marra. One time. But here, with nahi, if Allah says, don't steal, is it marra or takrar, do you think? It better be takrar. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen? Through our lifetimes, we have so many opportunities to steal. One of those times we don't steal and we say, oh Allah, I fulfilled and lived up to your nahi. Time to go have some fun, boys. All right? Pull down the masks. No. But what's the reason? What's the difference? Why is it marra over there but takrar over here? There's a very nice explanation to that. I don't want to get into it though. See, these are discussions. It's sad how people, you see, you have to have expertise, right? And the experts have had their discussions on these matters. It's just sad that when it comes to medicine, everyone says, oh, you have to have expertise there. When it comes to fiqh, when it comes to the deen and understanding the deen and deriving deen from the sources, and a lot of people feel like they're entitled to do that. Even the most basic things that we never even thought there was going to be a discussion on it, there's discussions on them. Right? I've given you examples before. To have certainty about something. When I'm certain about something, I'm supposed to, I'm going to act upon it. If I know it's nighttime right now, I know it's nighttime. I'm just going to act accordingly, in accordance with it being nighttime right now. But what if you're mistaken? We all know that we're supposed to just act based on our certainty. But someone might say, well, what if you're mistaken? The fact that you might be mistaken shows that you shouldn't act on your certainty. What's your answer going to be to that? These are all discussions. These are basic things. These are things that you would never think would have a discussion, but they do. Okay? Anyway, let's move on. Al-mafahim. This one is also interesting. There will sometimes be commands. We want to see what can we get out of it. Can we get a mafhum out of it or not? This is a technical term. Mafhum means concept, something that's understood. Okay? But in usul, in a context of usul al-fiqh, and ijtihad and taqlid and these things, mafhum has a special meaning, okay? It's not to be taken literal. A mafhum means the opposite of the rule that came in that command or that nahi. Does it hold or not? Is that an implication or not? I'll give you an explanation of what I mean, or an example of what I mean. For example, this first one, what is it? Mafhum shart. If I have a shart, a condition, put in the command that came to me. Okay? Can I understand from this command that if that condition is not met, there is no wujub anymore on me? For example, it says that when the sun rises or when Fajr sets in, yeah, if Fajr sets in on the month of Ramadan, you have to fast. Okay, this is a command, right? You must fast. Wujub of siyam and som. It is wajib to fast when it is Fajr time, if Fajr sets during the month of Ramadan. Question, does that mean that if Fajr hasn't set in, fasting is not wajib yet? That's a discussion. Did God say that? No. Did the Amr, all it said was, if this happens, this should happen. If you see Ali, give sadaqah. There's a condition here. If you see Ali, give sadaqah. Okay, so it is wajib for me to give sadaqah if I see Ali. Question, Does that mean sadaqah is not wajib on me if I don't see Ali? That part wasn't said. But can we get that from that initial command that we had? You see, remember I said in the beginning of our class, we said, how much can we get out of literature that comes our way, out of commands that we have? When it comes to shart, does it have a mafhum or not? In other words, does the opposite hold as well or not? If you see Ali, give sadaqah. That's all the hadith said. That's all the Imam told me. Can I conclude from this? If I don't see Ali, I don't have to give sadaqah? Well, in mafhum al-shart, usually they say, yes, there is a mafhum. That if the condition is not met, that means it's not wajib. And it's pretty clear. It's common sense kind of, right? But there is a discussion on these things. There are little stipulations here and there that some will have for this mafhum. What about the next one, mafhumul wasf? What if I don't have a condition, I have a wasf? This is a technical term here. Wasf obviously means a description of something or an adjective. Literally, that's what it means. But in this context, it has a special meaning. I'll give you an example. If you see, or not, there's no if here. That's not a shart anymore. The tall man has to be honored. Right? I'm pretty tall, right? The tall man must be honored. Let's say something else. The old man, okay, has to be honored. Old is an adjective. It's a wasf. What is it the adjective of? Man. Ar-rajul al-kabir, let's say. So you have something that is being described and you have an adjective, a sifa and a mawsuf, a wasf and a mawsuf. Question, does that mean, is this saying that if the man is not old, they should not be honored? Can I get this out of that? Here, unlike the previous one that was shart, they'll say, here, no, you can't take him mafhum. It's unclear. But then they'll have some explanations of why, what's your reason, and so on, it goes on. Okay? Next one, mafhumul ghaya. If the command I have doesn't have a shart in it, doesn't have a wasf in it, but it has a ghaya in it, a boundary, a limit set on it, does that mean if that limit is not met, then something's not wajib? For example, كل شيء طاهر حتى تعلم أنه نجس. Everything is tahir for you unless you reach certainty that it has become najis. Yeah? Can I say the flip side now? Is there a flip side here? Can I? Here they will say yes, some might say no, there's a discussion here. Ghaya. Ighsil, wash your arm until the elbow. Does that mean I don't have to wash after that? Or no, there's still a chance that I still have to wash a little bit over that as well. Or go up all the way till my shoulder when I'm making wudu. There's arguments here. There's discussions here. The ghaya, a limit that's set, does it have a mafhum or not? Does it mean that after that I don't have that rule anymore? Or no, there's still a possibility that the rule continues. There's a discussion there as well. Mafhumul hasr. If there are certain words that come in the sentence, for example, in Arabic, it's like innama. It's illa. It's bal. These kinds of things. I'll give you some English examples. If it says, verily you must give charity to the poor, does that mean that you shouldn't give charity to somebody that's not poor? Does that mean someone might not be poor? They might have a big bank account somewhere else, but now they're stuck in another country and they don't have access to their funds. They're poor. Are they poor? Are they not? They're not poor. This guy's rich. Think about it. Elon Musk is stuck somewhere, yeah, and he has no access to any funds whatsoever. Are you going to call him poor? No, because he got a big fat bank account somewhere else. But does that mean that sadaqah is not to be given because he's not considered a poor person if he's stuck and he's a Muslim and he's whatever, stuck in a situation? Muslim, non-Muslim even. There's a lot of these details, okay? Yeah? Does it have mafhum? Give charity to the poor? Yeah? Only charity is to be given to the poor. Verily. Don't give charity except to the poor. This will be a little different than verily the poor must be given charity. You see, all these discussions are that this is called hasr. When you confine something using these words, you confine it, you narrow the scope of something with these. Mafhumul adad. O mu'mineen. Adad, what is adad in Arabic, in English? And that means number. There's a number given to you. In the month of Rajab, it is great to fast 3 days. Does that mean if I fast more than 3 days, it's not great? In your qunut of Salatul Witr, do dua for 40 mu'mineen. Does that mean don't do more? Or can it be no more? Some might say that no, you're not supposed to go over 40 in this one. But in that case of 3 of Rajab, it's okay if you go over. Well, what's the difference then? Which one is it? Does it have mafhum or does it not have mafhum? Do I stop or do I not stop? Does the rule flip after 3 or does it not flip? That's what mafhum means. Does it flip or does it not flip? You see, these are discussions. Who would have thought these are even discussions? And as I said, these are very hermeneutical. Yeah, you'll have this is hermeneutics. Most of it is, if not all of it. Mafhum al-laqab. The thief, laqab, okay, a title. It's different than mafhum al-wasf. There's a little technical difference I don't want to get into. The thief, for example. If someone is considered thief, if there's a title for something, thief, the one who gives usury, this, that, will there be a mafhum here or not? The thief is to be punished in this way. Does that mean that no one other than a thief is supposed to be punished in this way? Or no? We know for a fact that a thief is to be punished this way, but there's a chance that others can also have the punishment of a thief. What is the punishment of a thief? Although there's like 20 conditions for that, but you know, the فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا, yeah? So, I'm not going to translate that, right? So, to sever a part of their limb. This is not just anyone who steals anything, by the way. There's like 20 conditions almost that have to be met for that punishment to be carried out. And let me let you know that right now in this day and age, no one carries that punishment out anyway. So we're just speaking theoretically here. If there's a punishment like this for a certain person that's called a thief, does that mean that it's impossible for now an adulterer to also have such a punishment? And so on and so forth. Does it flip? Meaning this punishment will never be applicable to anybody else? No. Proving it here doesn't disprove it for everywhere else. That's mafhum. So these are some of those discussions we have when it comes to al-amr, al-nahi, and some of that. So now let's move on now. Let's move on to our next slide here. It's the al-am wal-khas. Okay? Am, we have this word in all of these, in all of our languages, versus khas, right? Khas means something that's specific. Am means something that's general. So al-am and al-khas, or umum and khusus. Generality versus specificity. I think I looked it up and it was a word. Okay, so how do we know if something is general versus specific? How do we know something is am versus khas? What are the differences between these? Sometimes a command is going to come down and it says akrim kull al-ulama. All right, which means honor all of the ulama. Kull, all. Every mother is to be honored, for example. Every parent has to be respected by their children, and so on. Okay, when it says every, what do we get out of that? We get umum out of that. Well, what if my parents are old? Doesn't matter. What if they're young? Doesn't matter. What if they're well off? What if they are dependents of me? What if they're successful? What if they're not? What if this? What if that? It's that akrim kull walidain. All walidain have to be honored. A khas, though, on the other hand, is going to be what? Is when it says no. Don't honor all ulama. Akrimil udul min al ulama. We want you to honor and respect the ones who are pious of the ulama, not all ulama. So this is am, this is khas. Okay, that's. How do we understand am versus khas? Well, one of them is through these terms: every, all, kull, ba'ad, and these ones. Okay. Now, sometimes you will have an am, and then a khas comes next to it, and we have to now reconcile. On one hand, it says akrimil ulama, honor these scholars. On the other hand, we will have something that says la tukrimil fusaq. Don't honor people who are sinners. Well, now we have, let's say, a scholar who is a scholar, but at the same time is a sinner. Okay, don't look at me strangely, but yeah. You have a scholar that's also a sinner. Which one is it here? Is it, do I look at this am here that said, don't that said honor all ulama, or do I look at the one that says do not honor sinners? Which one is it? He falls under sinner, but he also falls under ulama. Which one is it? Yeah, here there's these discussions of takhsis, it's called, to specify something after it sounded general. These are all discussions, reconciling between these. These look like they're conflicting, but are they conflicting? Sometimes you will have a general statement, akrim al ulama, the hadith will say, for example. Somewhere else it says, la tukrim al fusaq. You can tell, okay, then this person who said all scholars are to be honored and respected, what it was really meant by it. All scholars who are pious are to be respected. Not just all scholars, no matter what. So bringing these together and figuring these things out. Now, sometimes the specifier comes there within the sentence itself. Sometimes the specifier is in another hadith somewhere else. It requires a good grasp of our hadiths to be able to bring these together and reconcile. If it's there, if it's connected to the statement, then it's easy. La ilaha, there is no God. Okay, that's a very general statement. But right after it comes the specifier. What's the specifier? Illallah. So there is no God, but there's an exception to this. We're going to make an exception, and that is Allah. Okay? Sometimes no, like the Akrim al-Ulama example. It says one hadith by Imam al-Baqir, for example, says Akrim al-Ulama, but then Imam al-Sadiq later on says La tukrim al-Fusaq. We're like, oh, okay, if we bring these together, what we get from it is that when the Imam Baqir, he said that you're supposed to honor all of the ulama, what he meant was not the sinning ones of them. There are details and technicalities here, and I'm just giving you examples of these discussions, but there are a lot more technicalities here that I don't want to get into as well. Is this always the case? Are there exceptions to this rule that I'm giving you? For now, let's just hear it the way it is. Is the am invalidated after a specifier comes? Guys, it said honor all of the ulama. But then it made an exception for one group, the sinners of them. Okay? What if now I find another alim, that's an alim, he's not a sinner though, but this guy, man, he's banking and balling. This guy is so well off, not to the point where he's sinning, but I'm just like, man, I don't know. This guy is too flashy. Should I honor him or not? Well, there was an exception made for the sinners. What if there was an exception also made for the ones who are super wealthy, but I never heard that exception? Can I go back to that general rule of Akrim al-Ulama and say, at the end of the day, he is an alim, so he falls under that general category, and it's wajib to me to respect him too, even though he's super flashy and well off, and it hasn't reached the point of israf and sinning. This is a discussion. In other words, when a takhsis happens and you take one group out, you start having doubts a lot about other groups as well. Can we fall back on that to prove that the rule stays for all the other ones still? Or no, let's have to find a new command that will specify for me all the other ones as well. That's another discussion. Can we go by an before searching for a khas for it? Before searching for a specifier for it. So for example, I'll give you an example that you as Shia can maybe relate to. For example, there'll be verses of the Quran that will say, for example, السابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Okay? So this will be a general statement. All of those companions in the beginning that were with the Prophet, they're all mardi. Allah is happy with all of them. Okay, that is a general statement. Yes, but should I just look at that and not look for any specifiers for this? Should I just close my eyes now and just look at this with a tunnel vision and not look at all the other verses that will tell me, hey, every person is responsible for their own actions? Hey, if somebody was good all their life, but towards the end they messed up, then maybe then they're in trouble still. Or no, I say, no. This verse is saying no matter what. Without looking and searching for any other specifiers, I just say, oh Allah, you said this, it's over. Yeah? That's an aqaidi example. It's a theological example. That we're familiar with. Yeah? We will have a difference of opinion on this. But this also comes in fiqh. It also comes in fiqh. Yeah? For example, it'll say, I don't know, the verse of the Quran says, there are 4 things that are haram on you, or 5 things that are haram on you. And you're like, okay, that means everything else is halal on me. Does that mean I don't have to search and see if there's other hadiths or other verses that talk about other haram things? Or no, I just have my tunnel vision on this verse only. No, obviously, you have to go search. If you don't find it, then you fall back on the general rule that you had. Once you figure out what the exceptions were, you have to do a reasonable amount of searching and researching. Once you do that and you don't find any other qualifiers and other specifiers, then you say, okay, everything else remains under the general rule that we had in the Okay, that's another discussion. So is it wajib for us to go look for specifiers or no? That's the discussion. Can a khabar wahid be a specifier for a verse of the Quran? A khabar wahid that checks the boxes of reliability. And let's talk about fiqhi ones, where we had hujjiyah for khabar wahid, remember? If I have a verse of the Quran that says, this act is not wajib on you, it's not necessary for you to do this. But then a khabar wahid says, oh, there's an exception to that. Which one? Do I just say, no, we just throw this away? This verse is speaking against, this hadith is speaking against the verse of the Quran. Obviously, the Quran is qat'i, is yaqini. And so we're not going to take a khabar wahid, even if it checks the boxes. Or no, do we take it as a qualifier? Do we take it as a mukhassis, as they call it, that does takhsis of that general statement the verse of the Quran had? There's a discussion here, okay? And you'll be surprised that they'll say that, usually they'll say that it can do takhsis. That's what hujjiyah means. Although the Quran is yaqini, but we know that we're supposed to also follow this. It's not going against the verse, it's just taking 1 or 2 groups out. It's making an exception. It's saying that verse, what was meant by it was this actually. Okay, so we'll have that discussion as well. Other examples, for example, it says here, what happens if a pronoun comes after an that only refers to some of the instances of the For example, it says, honor the ulama. So from that, we know that there are some ulama that are mujtahids, there are some that are not mujtahid, right? So when it says honor the ulama and it doesn't say anything else, we're like, okay, that means honor the ulama, mujtahid or non-mujtahid even, correct? That's what the general statement is saying. But then, right after it, there's another sentence. It says, honor the scholars, the ulama, even if their ijtihad isn't from Najaf or Qum. Then you're like, wait a minute. The pronoun is going back to ulama, even if they, the ulama, but it's talking about only mujtahids here. It said ulama, scholars means mujtahid and non-mujtahid. But then it said if their ijtihad is from Najaf, is even not from Najaf or Qum. So wait a minute, does this pronoun that's talking only about a group of ulama, the mujtahids of ulama, is it enough to do takhsis of that general statement that we had and say, oh, when it said honor the scholars, it meant honor the mujtahids. Why? Because there was a pronoun that came after that's only talking about mujtahids. You see, it's very, very specific. And each person has to have their dalil for this. It's hard. Yeah. If I want to give you a normal example, what do I say? I tell my kid, hey, go to the store and get some drinks. Get something to drink. Let's say this. Get something to drink for tonight. Okay? Get something to drink for tonight. It doesn't matter if the sparkling water has added sugars or not in it. So one type of drink is sparkling water. Not all drinks are sparkling water. But look, I said go get something to drink. Something to drink means sparkling water, something fizzy, or something non-fizzy. It can be even water. It can be soda. It can be anything. It can be juice. But then what did I come with after that? A sentence I said after that was what? I said, but make sure that it doesn't matter. The sparkling water can have sweetener in it or not have sweetener in it. Wait a minute. Are you talking about, am I supposed to get a fizzy drink or am I supposed to get anything? The pronoun is only talking about sparkling waters. Yeah, so these discussions are there as well, and other discussions. I don't want to tire you. Let's move on and finish, inshallah. Our last slide. It says al-mutlaq and al-muqayyad. Absoluteness versus restriction. Okay? There's a difference between them, a technical difference between am and khas versus mutlaq and muqayyad. They're very similar in the sense that one is general, one is specific in scope, but there are differences here I don't want to get into at all because I'll confuse you. Yeah, I've written there. Mutlaq has to do with muqaddamat al-hikmah versus am versus textual. Okay. But all in all, yes, we have a discussion of mutlaq versus muqayyad. If it says, uh, if it says, bring me a, bring me some meat. Son, go buy some meat. Well, there's different types of meat. There's red meat, there's white meat, there's brown meat. There's what kind of meat are we talking about here? There's talking about which animal, all of these things. Well, it's mutlaq. He left it unrestricted. He said, bring me any type of meat. And so any type of these meats, one of them, if you bring them, is enough. One of them is bring any one of them, because he didn't specify. In Am, it said akrim al ulama. That means any alim you find, you have to honor all of them. Over there, it's all. Here, it's you can bring one type of meat. If you bring any of these, it's enough. Mutlaq versus muqayyad. If he says, bring meat, but yeah, I don't like chicken. What does that mean? That means bring anything other than chicken. This is called taqyid. This is muqayyad now. Okay, there's discussions here as well. Because sometimes you will have a mutlaq and you're like, okay, that means I can bring any type of it. But there's clues that might prove to you that he said something mutlaq and didn't restrict it, but in his mind it was restricted. For example, we have this idea of insiraf. Insiraf. Okay? When does that happen? Insiraf means when your mind goes to a certain group or a certain example of something more than others. For example, your dad's been talking to you for an hour about how good camel meat is. And then once he's done with talking about how good camel meat is, he says, son, go buy me some meat. He didn't say, go buy me camel meat. Go buy me meat. Yeah? Is beef part of meat? Yeah. If his son goes and buys beef and comes back, can he argue with his dad? Dad, you said meat. Meat? This is also meat. Or is his dad going to slap him and say, for an hour before that, we were talking about camel meat? Obviously, when I say go buy meat, what do I mean? It was mutlaq. The words I used were mutlaq, but there's enough clues here for it to be muqayyad. Sometimes these things happen, they have to be discussed. Shahid Sadr has something, he calls it munasabat al-hukmi wal-mawdu'. Yeah, sometimes something is said in a very unrestricted way, but we have to understand restrictedness from it. It's not mutlaq, it's going to be muqayyad. It's an amr that's mutlaq, but it's supposed to be muqayyad. Why? Because of munasabat al-hukmi wal-mawdu'. Example, it says, oh Imam, I got some najasa on my shirt, on my clothing. What am I supposed to do? He says, اغسله مرتين, wash it twice. This person might go and wash it with juice. That's still washing. Might go wash it with some other liquid other than water. Because the Imam just said, اغسل. But no, when we're in this context of asking about these things, the mawdu' we're talking about and the hukum the Imam gives, which is اغسل, wash it, these themselves are enough to clarify for us that, look, he said it in a mutlaq way, but what was meant? Muqayyad was meant. Okay? This is called munasabat al-hukm al-wudu'. Sometimes something is mutlaq and it's wide in scope, yeah? Or excuse me, it is narrow in scope, it's widened because of this. Sometimes it's wide and it's narrowed, okay? I'll give you another example. For example, the Imam is talking about making wudu'. It's wajib to make wudu with the water of Kufa. Well, the water of Kufa, a person who hears Kufa, okay, this is narrow now. Can we only make wudu with the water of Kufa? It's a very narrow scope. Munasabat al-hukm wal-wudu. He's talking about wudu and all of that. Obviously, anyone who hears this understands Kufa here in and of itself has nothing to do with the rule. The Imam is saying make wudu with water, but he said Kufa, the water of Kufa, because we're in Kufa right now. But this person, because of the munasabat al-hukm wal-wudu, the correspondence between these two, what is being spoken of and the rule that the Imam gave for it, they can tell the Imam said it in a narrow, muqayyad way, water of Kufa. But the mind understands what? The mutlaq is meant, all water. But we have to be very careful in our ijtihadat. If you say the Imam meant this but he didn't and you don't have enough proof for it, then you have done qiyas or something similar to that and you get in trouble. These are the pitfalls of ijtihad. Yeah, so figuring all of these things out. And finally, we have mujmal and mubayyan. Sometimes a term is used. Do this, do that, stay away from this, stay away from that, stay away from mutrib, music. The hadith will say mutrib, let's say. It'll say ghina. All right, we know stay away from is what it means that it's haram to go to it. But what is ghina? What is this? What is that? And something is not mubayyan, it's not clear, it's mujmal. What are we supposed to do? Do ihtiyat? Or no, we can do whatever we want because we're not sure what the rule is. There's discussions here as well. What are the rules? What are we supposed to do? What if there's a clash? And a lot of the details that we have in regards to that as well. Point being, brothers and sisters, as we're finishing this whole Quran and Sunnah that we went through over God knows how many sessions now, there's still all of these discussions that we have in regards to understanding what these texts are saying. Once we have verified that it is either hujjah or it has been said or that we know the Quran is the word of Allah, then understanding from them has its own discussions, and these were some, really just a scratch of the surface of the discussions we have in regards to now how do we understand from this literature that we have. Having said that, we are done with, yes, I can say that, we're done with Quran and Sunnah, the Kitab and Sunnah. What's left is aql and ijma'. That is what is left. That shouldn't be a long one. We'll keep those as short as possible. And once we're done with that, as I said, we'll move into the eras of different fiqh that we've had from the Imam's times all the way down, Ghaybat al-Sughra, Ghaybat al-Kubra, all the way down to our times. And then after that, we're done with the whole ijtihad section of this class. And then we'll see if we want to continue with taqdeed or not, inshallah. Any questions before I end? No? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salawat. السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة السلام على 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته